Hello there everyone. So since this is the first video of many tutorials going along with the class that I'm teaching at UA on spatial analysis of social data, I figured I'd give you an understanding of where I'm coming from and where the class is going. The class is focusing specifically on that social data and the spatial components of it. Given my background and the department that it's being taught out of, sociology and criminology, a lot of it's going to be crime-based since this is a crime-based course. That's not to say we won't have other types of data, social data. I have plenty of that available. We'll have even tutorials, videos, exercises about that. But to get started, a lot of it's going to stem around crime analysis, crime data itself. And to do that, I figured let's get hands-on with Excel, with some of the basics in Excel when it comes to different functions, formulas, making some charts, tables, just understanding and getting familiar with Excel, because that's where a lot of time is spent. Before you get into any spatial temporal analysis, you have to understand your data. And Excel is a great software program to use to understand your data. Get a quick glimpse. You can do some analysis in it, and we'll go over that. It's a starting point. So with that, I have Little Rock, Arkansas's data portal brought up. It's their website. You can see at the top. I chose Arkansas because I do a lot of my research on Little Rock, actively have a couple of projects going on. It's the capital of Arkansas, but also it's a fairly violent city, typically in the top 10 UCR-wise for cities over 100,000 population for both property and violent crime. Even for 2020, they saw about a 26% increase in violent crime when you average the prior 3 years from that. So with that, it gives us an opportunity to look at crime data, but also if you look at Little Rock, they're in the process of becoming a smart city and more data-informed, data-driven. So if you click around, they have quite a bit of different data on here. With that, 311 is just as important as other types of data: infrastructure, quality of life, government, and economic development. For our interests, let's go ahead and focus on safe city. And I do this because a lot of cities have a similar setup when they have data available online through data portals. This one's powered by, if you look at the bottom here, Socrata. A lot of cities use this one. You'll see similarities if you find another city, waste a filter, download the data, export it for your own use. Pretty standard. So once you get a hang of one site and how it's done, a lot of them, even if it's a different company, have a very similar process to it. Here, even within the public safety crime data, they have a lot of different data sets available for you, and you can search through, but really what I'm interested in is the 2020 crime data. So if we just click here, and it's the current data, is 2017 through current, so that's including even 2021, so today, or this one has last updated the 6th. With that, it breaks it down for you, some basic charts where you can see the breakdown of crime occurrence. So this, remember, goes back to January of 2017. You're able to export this. You see here the incident date, so we have date, time of day, the number, the policing district, and we'll get into that when we have a bit more spatial, the offense code, which matches UCR, the description, the location, which allows us to spatially pin that in a map or do other types of analysis, and it keeps the city, state, lat, long, which makes your life easier from a spatial sense. A lot of software, and especially Socrata, will auto-generate these for you. During this course, we'll also go over other ways to geocode, georeference data, so we can use it if you do not have the lat long, but say you have an address or a county or a state, you can attach and merge information in as you need it to spatially represent it. So with that, say we're not interested in all of, say, 2017, 2018, 2019, and even the current 2021 data. We can view the source data, and this, if you take a look at it once it pops up, it will look very similar to an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets. Let's hit View Data. So it's not made overly complicated with it. You're allowed, similar to what we'll do in Excel, filter, visualization, export. So say we're interested in just downloading the 2020 Little Rock data. So we can apply a filter. So we want to select a certain time frame that the incident date occurred between. So with that, we're going to hit filter. We're going to add a filter condition, a new one. And the incident date, we're going to change is to is between. And here, since we already have date, we can go ahead and select. So I'm going to go back to January 1 of 2020. And then the end date, I'm going to do as December 31st. And keep in mind here, you'll want to change the time to 11:59. So it's the end of day. And change that to p.m. and then we can apply our filter that way, and it went ahead and did that for us. So here you can see incident date. It's in descending, so 12/31/2020, the most recent one. Cool, now we have at least this data set filtered down, so we're not going to export and download as many incidents. We're not interested in 2017, 18, or 19, so that's a good starting point. We got rid of some cases that we're just not interested for this tutorial. So we're going to go up to export. Here it gives you quite a few options. For us, since we're going to use it right into Excel, we're going to do a comma separated file for Excel. Keep in mind, since you're downloading it as a comma separated file, you'll want to resave it as an Excel workbook just so it's easier for yourself. I'm going to just save this to my desktop for now. Make sure if you're saving this, you know where you're saving it to. Little Rock 2020 crime data. So we're good to go there. Hit save. You can see here, since I'm using Google Chrome and I set it to save, it will generate here for me, so I can open it up automatically. And once it loads, let me bring it over here to the shared screen. So we can see here we have the same fields as we did in that table that we saw on the website. With that, like I said, let's go ahead and save as a workbook versus the CSV. So just truly going to resave it. Little Rock 2020 crime data. And many of you might notice, instead of spaces, I use underscores. This is out of habit, so when you use ArcGIS, ArcPro, they didn't accept spaces for a while, so with that, I just got in the habit of having underscores and no actual spaces in it. However you want to name it, just be familiar with how you name it so you know what to look for with it. Alright, so since it's resaved now, we have the data in front of us. Cool, great. Now let's get an understanding of what the data actually looks like. So we have it resaved. What if we wanted to sort the data? So in Excel, we have quite a few options of how to just visualize and just look at the data before we do any type of analysis. So with that, we already have the Home tab. So we come over here and go to Sort. And keep in mind, I hit this triangle up here so it highlights the entire workbook. I'm going to hit a Custom Sort. So I'm interested in sorting by, let's say we want to do offense description. We can do offense description, and it's going to do it based on the value itself. So it's going to do here alphabetical A to Z. We could do Z to A with that. You can change it based on other parts, even the color and all of that with it. When we get to more advanced parts, this is where we can play around with it a bit more. But for now, this is really just the basics of how to sort data and give you an idea. So if we do that, as you notice, it enlarged it. If you see at the end here with the location, and this is standard in kind of the pane of when it exports from Socrata. It has the address with the city, state, and the lat long attached to it. So it puts it all in one cell and has terrible spacing with it. With that, we can leave it there. It's not a big deal for us for what we're doing. You can even delete it since we already have that information in the prior ones. So it's not a big deal either way. So if I just right click on the column, hit delete, you can see it all comes back. And here we can see, since we did sort by offense description and alphabetical, ag assault's at the top. So there we have a good idea of how many ag assault down to theft of motor vehicle parts. You can see along the temporal line we have we have 13,391 incidents in 2020. So we can get an idea of that. So if we know how to sort, we can at least do that. We can do time of day. So if we wanted to change this to newest to oldest, again, I'm going to highlight all of the data through that. I'm going to custom sort. Instead of the offense description, I'm interested in the incident date. And here I want to do newest to oldest. So 12/31 will come up first, and even time of day shows up in here. Keep in mind, this is military time. And at the end, I'll show how to filter out, or not filter out, to take out the date from the time. It can be a headache sometimes depending on how the data set is downloaded, but you can split that and separate it into two different columns if you want the date and then the time of day separate. We'll get into how to do that. It can be a headache, and I say that because I might screw it up the first time, but it might take you a couple times. It's a learning process to remember how you did it. So we got through how to save, how to sort. Now say we want to filter. Say we're only interested in understanding how many potential, or we wanted to look at burglary B&E. So we see that burglary B&E is one of these. So if we want to look at filtering, we're going to create a filter, and at the top you can see that I already recognized the first row as our headers, and even the one that we deleted. So here, if I click on the offense description drop down, we have all the different values within this. If we want to call it our variable, this variable, these are all the categories within it. So I'm going to deselect all, and what I said I was interested in, burglary B&E. So I can hit OK, and now it limits this data set, so you can make a subset or a sub data set of 2020 data. Say you just wanted to look at burglary B&E, say you wanted to look just at a homicide or ag assault, since those are kind of the sexy violent crimes that people typically look at. It gives you options to look around. But with that, say you wanted to use this as a separate data set. An easy way to do that then is to highlight your top row, hold down Control and Shift, and hit the down arrow. This highlights just your data set itself and the rows with that. If you then do Control C for copy, here I'm going to open a new sheet and Control V. So here you can see this is just our burglary B&E data for 2020 for Little Rock itself. It's still in newest to oldest, so it still has 2031 at the top, December 31st. A key part to this, if you're adding sheets and copy and pasting, give it a new name at the bottom so you can change these to what you want, just so you know what they are. Here, since it's burglary B&E, I'm going to put B and E down there. So now I know what this data set relates to. Here it's the original, all the data. Now we just have burglary B&E on this one, so we know how to do that. Another key part, and depending on the data set and the analysis you're looking at, you can look and use a find and replace. So here I'm going to go ahead and just clear the filter. So by clearing the filter, it just takes it off and gives you your original data set back. Good part. Back to normal, we're good to go. Say we're interested, since we have incident location, say for whatever reason it may be, and I'm going to turn off the filter now. We're just interested in seeing what crime's on a certain street. So we can put in, let's put in University Ave. So here, say we're just interested in finding University. So it's going to search, since I have column F highlighted, so the incident location, it's only going to search that column since I only have that highlighted. It's only going to look for University. But here it will take us down to each time we see University present. Another one you could do is just hit Find All, and it generates the whole series of where they appear for you. That's if you're trying to find specific, if you have a specific address. One Children's Way, for example, I know is the hospital. So with that, that's where it's helpful to understand your data, the city you're looking at. So that's where a lot of ag assaults are reported. You might think, well, that's odd. Sure, some ag assaults could occur at the hospital, but also it could be where it was reported and the officer took the report and that's the address they put down for it. With that, so we have our find. If we wanted to replace, so say, since we have the state here, say we wanted to find where it said AR and replace it with the full state name of Arkansas. So with that, since I have this column highlighted, keep in mind it's only the state one, I want to replace. So I'm going to want to replace here AR with Arkansas. Now you can do it individually and do replace and replace and replace 13,000 times, or since you know they all have AR in it, you can just hit replace all. And it made those for us, it made the 13,000 changes for us. And if you're wondering how to resize some of these cells, if you just double click, it goes to the extent of your longest one. So here we see that. So say incident location was super small. If we just double click the F, it generates to the longest cell value you have. So it helps us there. So we're good to go there. Now with that, this is a basic data set. And if you're looking at crime analysis and crime for a specific city, this is pretty standard information that you get. You'll get incident date, time, a number. Depending on the city, you might get some type of policing district, officer number, but you'll likely get an offense code, a description, and some level of location. Every jurisdiction's a bit different on how comfortable they are with giving you address level information. With that, these are specific addresses. Some instances you might get 100 blocks, so you don't know the exact address it's at, but you get the street or the street segment that it's at. So with that, keep in mind, even juvenile crimes and even sex-based offenses are typically have some redaction to the address field itself, so you don't know where it's occurring or to the exact address that it is occurring. Here we have quite a bit of data in front of us, so it's pretty cool to see already. So say we're interested in understanding what exactly we're looking at. And Excel gives you quite a few different options. If you watch the first video that I posted of how to clip data and add in the data analysis tool pack, you'll know Excel has built-in stats functions and especially data analysis. So you can do some basic analysis depending on the data set you have. If you're truly interested in this, I have videos uploaded on the YouTube page in reference to the social data and analysis class that I teach. So this walks you through how to use some of these itself. So if you're interested, check that out on YouTube with the CASDAL YouTube page. But we'll get into some of these, especially text to columns, remove duplicates, and consolidation. Those are valuable to us. We'll want to get into and use those depending on the data set, and we'll have examples of how to use those, especially remove duplication. Flash fill is a good one. Text to column. So text to column, if we want to do one for example, which is a good one that you'll probably have to use multiple times. I'm going to go ahead, since I want to split incident date, I want to split the date and time. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and insert just some blank cells next to it so I can separate it. I already know this because I've made the mistake many times. But now that I have this column highlighted, and again, I'm just going to click A1, the cell, and hold down Control-Shift down arrow, and it highlights just that data row itself, so it stops when there's no longer any data attached to it. And I want to do text to columns. So here you can see what the data look like. So you can either do a delimited, where if there's a comma or tab, you can specify that that's where it changes into a different column. If it's fixed width, you can choose literally, I guess we can do both ones. You can choose here for a data preview on where you put that fixed width part, so where it changes for you. With that, you can also go delimited, and here we have a space. So we also know that a space separates the two, but it also separates the AM PM part. So there's a couple different ways you can do this, and it can become problematic. Knowing this one, and hopefully it works out a bit better in my mind, we're going to go ahead and do a fixed width. And we're going to go ahead and do that at 1231. So you can see here, this is going to be the longest one, so it has double digits in each one in the full year. So here, I'm going to hit next, and it goes ahead and already does this for you, so it identifies this one. You can specify what it is. So here it's a month, so here we can do its month, day, year, so we're going to keep it that way. And here, we know this one's a time one, and well, hopefully it will stay where it's supposed to. And let's see, there we go, we got it. And here we see incident date, it hit that off, so we just put date there at the time here. So now we have date and time. The pain is you can see now that these have 0, 0, 0. Don't get out of sorts with it. It's not a big deal. So if you come in here and go to your home page again and go number format, you'll see that date is an option here. So we can change that even to include the day of the week, which is helpful if you want to make a temporal heat map. We'll get into that at another point, but it is valuable information. So if you go ahead and go to date, change this to day of week along with the date, we'll see here that December 31st of 2020 was a Thursday. And of course, you should double check in any way you can. We double check here in our just calendar, bam, we have it there, Thursday the 31st. All right, so now you know some basics of how to use text to columns, especially with the date time field. It's pretty common when you download data sets. You have time of day, you have incident number. Well, what if you wanted to just summarize this table as a whole? There's a lot going on here. How many crimes, or how many ag assaults are there? How many other larcenies are there? There's a couple different ways you can do it, but an easy one, and these can be your best friend, is we're going to go ahead and highlight our data set again, and we're going to go to Insert and Pivot Table. This one's going to be helpful in many, many instances, so play around with pivot tables and get comfortable with them. So since I already highlighted the data set, it already selects that in it. It's going to make a new worksheet for us, so I'm happy with that. And then we have a table that we need to generate. So with that, like I said, we were interested in offense description, so a row, and say we wanted to know just how many there are. We can easily just grab one of these, incident number, and we're going to put it under values. See here, it already did count for us. And if you had other things that you wanted to say average or sum, you can go into and change what it displays here for you. I was interested in just the count. So how many ag assaults were there in 2020 for Little Rock? Just over 3,000. If we go down, murder, non-negligent manslaughter, we have 47. So you can see the breakdown of offenses in Little Rock for 2020. Gives you a nice summary of what's going on in the city as a whole. You can compare it to prior years. You can see percent change. Some pretty cool stuff with it. But say you're also interested in, this is what people usually use Excel pivot tables for when it comes to a quick crime analysis type thing, is time of day. So we're going to keep it in hour format. You can change this to military time, so it's 0 to 23. That's pretty common. I can get rid of time here, so I can just remove, so it keeps only the hour part. And say again, we just want to know the count. So now we know based on the count of how many there are. I'm going to change this, so I highlighted the data here, and I'm going to go into design, home, conditional formatting, and I want to color scale. So here I want to scale it based on the high and low values. So here you can see the higher values red, lower values are dark green. This gives you an idea of hot times. So keep in mind, not surprisingly, between 1 a.m. and about 7 a.m. it's kind of our low period. Keep in mind also though, this is all of our crime data. So this is 13,000 different incidents. Helpful, knowledgeable, sure, it helps us here. But what about if we wanted to look at specific crimes? So that's where you can insert a timeline. So if you want to do it even by month, you can break it down. But also if you wanted to just have a filter. So we have the filter option here. So if we put in offense description and it auto put it into rows, we're going to put it as a filter. So now at the top, we have the option to apply all or select multiple items. Or say I'm just interested in ag assaults. Let's see what that looks like. So you see a shift here. Not exactly the same, similar time points and similar general color schemes. But now let's change the ag assault to, say, burglary B&E. We see different time points. We see now middle of the day is a lot hotter in terms of how many there are occurring, and this is over the course of a year. So keep in mind this is a quick way just to get an understanding of hot time points over the course of a day. Even shoplifting, and keep in mind shoplifting is an interesting one, because not many stores are open until 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 a.m. kind of stuff. So it makes sense this way, especially when you see the hot points in the mid-afternoon to early evening to late evening. Stores start to close that way around that time as well. So you have a good idea of what's going on then. So again, if you want to take the filter off, you can come over here and just remove the field, and you're back to your full data set. So say you wanted to insert a timeline now. So if you just hit timeline, it will generate two, and it looks at it and it's like, well, you could use date or time. So you could do time of day or the actual date. I'm going to click date, hit OK. What we see here is it's generating time points for us. And if we just click January of 2020, we get a breakdown of time of day for that. We can change it to February. We can do the first quarter, January through March. So we can see what it looks like across if you want to look at seasons or specific months. And keep in mind, this is just a timeline itself. So it is a time filter, but we can also keep on if you wanted to look at offense description as a filter. So say we kept on ag assault. So ag assault in January, you can see time of day had 206. If we keep moving along to June, 344. A dip in July, which was somewhat surprising if you look at all the violence data in Little Rock. This is the COVID year, and you saw an interesting dip come that time point. But then we get October up to 315, 279. So it breaks it down for you based on time of day and month of the year. So pretty cool, pretty interesting ways to go about it. Again, these are kind of just some of the basic parts of Excel, showing you a plethora of parts. The assignment will have some of these in it, so I'll have you go through it a bit more in depth. Again, these are some of just basics of Excel that you need to become familiar with. We'll use it all throughout the semester. So with that, you can delete it. And a cool part, since we already have the data up, and many of you are probably wondering, well, this is a spatial class. Why am I not seeing data? Why can I not see this? So with that, if we still have the data highlighted, so the same part here, we have a couple options, and depending on what version of Excel you have, I can do a 3D map and I can open 3D maps. Since we have the incident location, we're good to go there. We also have city and state, which is phenomenal. We have zip code, but we also have the latitude and longitude, so we know where those are located, the coordinates of that incident itself. So give this a second. It'll likely take a bit of time to load no matter whose computer you're on, but give it a second. So you can see here, since I had that data highlighted, it brought in my variable names at the top, and it's asking what are your location fields. It's trying to match it already. So it went ahead and did latitude to latitude, longitude to longitude, and city to city, and zip to zip. So we're good to go. So here, if we continue to zoom out, you can see it's the entire United States. As we zoom in to Little Rock, and yes, it's considered flyover zone of the United States, we can see where they're all located. And here you can see that some got geolocated outside of the city boundaries. That's problematic, and that's where you can start to see if you need to do double checks, re-geocode some of the addresses, or if Little Rock was down assisting the agency. There's a couple different reasons that could happen, but we'll go over those when we get into that a bit more in depth. But a pretty cool part is it generated all your points for you. And here we can easily do, if you want to do a timeline, you can do the date itself. So you can do it over time points of days over the year of 2020. You can add filters, so if you're only interested in a specific crime type. So again, if we do offense description, it's processing and brought them all up. Let's keep it to ag assault, and let's do also murder, non-negligent manslaughter. We can close that. So now we're only seeing those. Now let's change this so you can see a bit more. So you can see the variation here. But a cool part is if we do the time and date, sorry about that. Let's do day. You can start to see, and it went very quick, but if we hit play down here, it'll go through every day that there is an ag assault or manslaughter charge, and it generates it for us. You might wonder, well, that's cool, but it's not showing why. So you could change the height based on the count by address. Another cool one, and a quick way to visualize data in Excel, is just a heat map. You might recognize these from what you see on the news when it comes to weather, but this is generally in criminology what we call a hotspot map. Police use this, scholars use this, practitioners use this all the time. So this gives us an understanding of just where crime's occurring, clusters of crime over time. So if we do this again, we can kind of see how different hotspots pop up, morph together over the course of 2020. So each one of those is an individual incident, and they start to merge as they become more densely populated in certain areas. We see where hotspots emerge for violence in Little Rock. So this gives us a pretty cool, easy way to look at it. We'll go much more in depth in some of our other software, but this is a good place to start. Again, Excel gives you a lot of options. If you want to play around with it, I highly recommend it. But you can change different parts of it. You can have different themes if you want it to go dark. Everyone has their own preferences with it. What I generally recommend is remember who your audience is and what you're trying to translate. Make it as easy as possible to it and do it from there. So you can add labels with it as well. You can take them off. I mean, there's plenty you can do in here, and you can export out. You can even save it as a video file and share it. I've done that on my Twitter account as well. So that gives you a quick idea of how you could look at crime data in Excel from a spatial standpoint, but some of the basics within Excel when it comes to just understanding data too. So I'm going to delete that little part up there. But we went over how to resave, a sort filter, your copy and paste function, rename in a sheet, your find and replace, your pivot table, where the data tab's located. And we'll get into some of these over the course of the semester. We'll use them in different points just so you're familiar with them. But these are some of the basics within Excel that you should be used to. I didn't get into heavily into making charts, similar to how you have your pivot table. So I'm going to rename this so we know what it is. So this is our pivot table. Say I wanted to make a quick pivot or recommended chart for this. I could change this to, let's take the time out and let's do our offense description. And say I just wanted a chart. I can go to recommended charts. It's pretty spot on with what it wants to pull. And here you can tell that it's already pulling the information here. And that's what I was looking for, is honestly just a bar chart with it. You can even do pivot charts that have the information for you as well. So basic column bar graph is fine for this. So you can hit OK, and it will generate from the data you have here. What you'll notice is, since it's tied to the pivot table, all of these measures are tied to this. So if you changed it to just one offense, it's going to change that as well. If you just wanted to compare two of them, all larceny, and let's say you wanted to toss up their shoplifting, it restricts that. It filters the data to what you're looking at. So this is just a quick tutorial, I say quick, a half an hour, of a common type of crime data set that you'll see, that you'll encounter if you're trying to find your own project data set for a city that you're interested in, a crime type that you're interested in. A lot of jurisdictions will have a data set or data portal that looks similar to what you see in front of you. It's what you do after that, how you clean it, how you prep it, that we'll use Excel and ArcGIS Pro to get into a bit more, to learn the skills of how to visualize the data when you don't always have, say, latitude and longitude. If you have to concatenate different parts of an address, different parts, almost different tips, tricks to it, and we'll get into using some of the formulas that are in Excel. It might sound like this is very in-depth, but we'll get through it. Trust me, it's a good technique, and I view this as a skill set that you can use, and it's marketable. So we'll get into some of this, and I continue to learn on this weekly. Excel is a powerful tool that you can do a lot in. Some things you don't know until you just poke around and watch a lot of YouTube videos. I've done that. So we'll get into it a bit more, and we'll get into some of the different functions of it. And if there's questions throughout the semester, more tutorials you want to see, or some more time spent on a specific one, let me know. I don't mind making these. I enjoy it. I view it as time well spent, because if you don't have a question, I'm sure somebody else does. Or if you have a question, someone probably has a similar one to it. But just let me know. I'm happy to do some different tutorials with this as the semester progresses. If not, take a look at this, but also there's going to be an assignment posted for my class that relates to what I went over here. A couple expectations concerning assignments. Watch the video on how to use your screen capture, your snipping tool, because I want to see some of the screen captures. I want to see how you've done this. Other than that, follow along on the assignments, watch the video, you'll be good to go. If there's any questions, like I said, reach out. But week 1 is up and running. Take care.